Hello everyone. Let us start with a new chapter, that is cell cycle and cell division. So let us divide this chapter into four main parts. In the first part we will see the overview of the cell cycle, and in the second part we will see mitosis, and in the third part we will see meiosis, and in the last part we will see the quick revision of the series. So it is parted into four parts so that it will be very easy for us to study. So first we will have the introductory part, that is the overview of the cell cycle. So before moving to the overview of the cell cycle, we must know what is cell cycle. So what is cell cycle? Cell cycle means it's a series of events that takes place in the cell. From there, two daughter cells are being formed. So cell cycle means it's a series of events which is taking place in the cell, and from there two daughter cells are being formed. So if we take about the duration in the mammalian cell as well as in the eukaryotic cell, within 24 hours cells will be dividing. Within 24 hours cells will be dividing. So we can divide this cell cycle into two phases, interphase as well as the M phase. So let us see what is interphase. So interphase means it is the longest phase in any of the cell. Interphase means it is the longest phase in any of the cell. We can call even it as a resting stage. This interphase stage we can call even it as a resting stage. They are the non-dividing phase. We can call the interphase as non-dividing phase. Why? Because here no division takes place. In the interphase stage, here no division takes place. So preparation is taking place here. That's what it is known as preparatory stage. So when preparation is ready, then only the division takes place. So that's what the interphase stage is called, the preparatory stage, because it prepares the cells to be divided. We call this interphase stage as intermitosis. Why do we call it as intermitosis? Because it takes place between the two mitotic cycle. So interphase stage we call it as because it takes place between the two mitotic cycle. That's what we call it as intermitosis stage. Interphase is otherwise called as intermitosis stage because it takes place between the two mitotic cycle. So we can start this stage, the preparatory phase, we can call it as a preparatory phase or we can call it as energy phase. So interphase has many names. So we can say that 95% of the time of the cell will be involved in the interphase stage. 95% of the cell will be involved, most of the cell will be involved in the interphase stage. What is interphase stage? That is the preparatory stage. So next, moving towards the next phase, that is gap 1 phase, or we can call it as G1 phase. As I have told you, G1 phase is otherwise termed as gap 1 phase. Okay, G1 phase is otherwise termed as gap 1 phase. Otherwise we can call it as interval phase. Okay, otherwise we can call it as interval phase. So here a mitosis का बीच का DNA का replication का बीच का phase जो है उसी को क्या बोलते हैं? This phase is termed as gap 1 phase, or we can call it as G1 phase. Here what is taking place? Almost it is taking place at the end of the cell division. Almost it is taking place at the end of the cell division. RNA ka synthesis will be taking place here. DNA synthesis will be taking place here in this phase. So we are talking about the gap 1 phase. So in the gap 1 phase, RNA synthesis will be taking place, protein synthesis will be taking place, and here cell is metabolically active and growth will be taking place here continually. Growth will be taking place continuously, and here the duration will be varying from cell to cell. That's what we have to remember. Okay, here in the gap 1 phase, otherwise we can call it as G1 phase, it is mainly termed as interval phase. This is the phase between the mitosis as well as the DNA replication between these two phases, and also it is almost taking place at the end of the cell division, and here mainly the RNA synthesis is taking place, protein synthesis is taking place in the G1 phase, or we can call it as gap 1 phase, and here the cell is metabolically very active and growth will be taking place here continually, and here duration of the cells varies. From cell to cell it varies. So next moving towards the S phase. What is S phase known as? S phase means it is synthesis phase. We can call S phase as synthesis phase. Here what is happening? DNA synthesis is taking place in the S phase, or synthesis phase we can call it as DNA synthesis is taking place in the S phase. It is almost asked, this question is being asked, in which phase DNA synthesis takes place. Many options will be given and you can say write the answer as S phase. So as I have told you, DNA replication also takes place here. So duration is almost 7 hours. No need of remembering the duration and all. It is not necessary. Just keep the presence of mind in which phase DNA synthesis is taking place. So that is in the S phase. We can call it as synthesis phase. Next moving towards the G2 phase. Next phase is regarding the G2 phase. So in the G2 phase, here what is taking place? DNA synthesis stops. So in the S phase we have learned DNA synthesis taking place. Here the DNA synthesis stops. So here the protein is being formed. Protein is being formed for the mitosis. And synthesis of macromolecules is also taking place here in this G2 phase. Synthesis of macromolecules is taking place. Here the nucleus volume also increases. And the duration is of 5 hours. Duration, no need of remembering, just remember what is happening in the G2 phase. What is happening in the G2 phase? DNA synthesis stops, protein is being formed for the process of the mitosis, and synthesis of macromolecules will be taking place, and the nucleus volume is being increased. So all this is taking place in the G2 phase. So what is the duration here? Duration is about 5 hours. If we talk generally about the G1 phase, what is happening in the G1 phase? We can tell that it is the first growth phase. Okay, G1 phase is the first growth phase. What is happening here? ATP will be here, nucleotides are here, amino acids are there, RNA is there, proteins are there. The growth of the cell will be taking place here. The growth of the nucleus will be taking place. All this will be taking place in the G1 phase. So G1 phase is the first growth phase. So hope you might have understood. So in the G1 phase, ATP will be there, nucleotides will be there, amino acids will be there, RNA will be there, proteins will be there, then the growth of the cell will be taking place here, the growth of the nucleus will be taking place. All this is taking place in the G1 phase, that is the growth phase. Then in the S phase, what is taking place? So DNA replication will be taking place here, and also the histone synthesis is taking place here. Then the growth of the nucleus is taking place, as well as the chromosome replication and duplication is taking place in the S phase. Then in the G2 phase, what is happening in the G2 phase? RNA and protein synthesis is taking place. RNA and protein synthesis is taking place in the G2 phase. Then formation of the macromolecules. Then spindle formation will be taking place here. Then the growth of the cell will be taking place here. So after the S phase, what is happening? The chromosomes pairs will be known as chromatids. After the S phase, the chromosomes pair will be known as chromatids. And how these chromatids are being connected? By a centromere. It is being connected by a centromere. Usually here a relevant question comes that which is the following of is the largest phase in the cell cycle. So which is the largest phase in the cell cycle? That we all know, that is the interphase state. So here we do wind up the introductory part. That's all about the introduction. We will see the overview of the cell cycle tomorrow, the next class. So thank you for being attentive.